Hello and welcome back to the Fit 40 podcast, where we simplify exercise and nutrition for busy people over 40 so they can improve their health and feel amazing. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach for people over 40 since 2015. And today we're going to be talking about the disconnect between GLP-1s and fitness. And before I get started, if anybody's watching on YouTube, you could see Teddy popping in here trying to lick me and get involved already at the start. But anyway, so the disconnect between GLP-1s and fitness. The reason I bring this up is because I want to bring the discussion that I've been having a lot with clients to the podcast so that other people can get this perspective as well, because there's a lot of confusion around GLP-1s, how to implement them, dosing and everything when it pertains to incorporating strength training, because a lot of things change when you incorporate strength training. A lot of expectations need to change so that way you could put yourself in the best position to improve your health long term and get the best results and not have to go on and off GLP-1s for the rest of your life and just be in that cycle of losing and gaining, losing and gaining. So by the end of this, I hope that you have some good strategies and good perspective to get to that place. So let's start off with what I'm personally seeing. Now, this is straight anecdote. I'm just giving you what I'm seeing from talking to people on the floor. And that is, number one, people are eating next to nothing, or at least they feel like they are, and they're very tired, very lethargic, not able to complete workouts, or not able to give their best efforts, okay? And they're not losing weight. And because of that, because the guidelines say, okay, if you're not losing weight, we got to increase the dosage, that's what happens. And then when you increase the dosage, sometimes, most of the time, people seem to have worse side effects, which makes them feel crappier and also eat next to nothing. But in the short term, this creates some benefits, like they're feeling good pretty quickly, but long term, it does present issues. So let's talk about those short-term benefits. Number one is feeling great pretty fast. And this happens anytime anybody hops on a diet, when they're already on the standard American diet, or they're eating things that cause them to have more inflammation, like they're sensitive to these things. Maybe they're allergic and they don't know, or they have some sort of sensitivity and it's just pissing off their gut. Something is happening and now it's out of the equation. Or they're also not doing other bad things that could potentially harm their health, and maybe their gut might get impacted by, which is drinking and drug abuse and things like that. So like GLP-1s have been seen to actually reduce drinking and drug abuse for some people. So it's very cool in that regard, but we're going to be talking about as it relates to overall energy and performance today. So what are the problems that come with this? Well, let's start with the eating nothing, because if you are truly eating nothing, yeah, you're going to see weight loss, which is the whole point for most people to get on these drugs, because when you lose excess body fat, it can improve your overall health. But if you push it too far and you lose too fast and you are eating nothing, it is a perfect storm for something like osteoporosis or sarcopenia, which is the loss of bone and the loss of muscle and the loss of function in your muscle, which is a very bad recipe for when you get down the road and you're in this position where you're older, you're more fragile, and that could lead to things like falls and leading to injuries that could potentially put you in an early grave. For anybody who's familiar with when you have a fall and you break a hip, basically that kickstarts the timer on your timeline to dying. For most people, it really speeds up the clock, and you don't want that to happen. You want to be around for a long time and a good time. And along with that, it really hurts your relationship with food, because it creates this situation where you're like, okay, I'm just suffering for a little bit to get this weight loss and then I'll be fine. No, that's what we call that binge restrict cycle. That's what happens when you just say, okay, I'm going to white knuckle it for now and then I'm going to come off it. Because guess what happens when you come off it? Now you're going to put all that weight back on, because if you're doing the exact same thing that put you in the situation in the first place, you are going to get right back to that place. It might take some time, but eventually you will get there if nothing changes. And you're just going to be like, okay, I got to suffer again. And then it just never, ever ends. And when you do this, it'll never really teach you like how to eat. That's the big thing that I'm noticing with a lot of people who are on these medications. They don't have any guidance on exactly how to change their eating habits. They're just eating less of what they normally eat, which was causing all the problems in the first place. So there's a lot of nutrient deficiencies. There's a lot of feeling like crap. There's a lot of just subpar results, and it's a setup for failure. And we want to fix that. Okay. But first, let's talk about some of the things that are happening that are messing up the mindset around this stuff, like the not losing weight, for example. First, we want to identify what is fat versus weight. Like fat loss and weight loss are not the same thing, especially when we're incorporating something like strength training. And if you are new to strength training, one of the things that happens is newbie gains. You put on muscle at a rapid pace, and that will put on weight. But if you're also losing body fat at the exact same time, the scale says nothing. And then you go into your doctor and you're like, I'm not losing weight. And they're like, let's bump it up, even though you may be putting on a bunch of muscle and burning body fat, which is the best case scenario. Your clothes are fitting better. You're feeling like, oh, I feel a little bit tighter. But that scale is like, hey, screw you. You didn't do anything this past month. And you're like, damn, I feel like I was actually doing something. So you want to understand if fat is coming off, because if it is, that's doing the job. That is what this whole thing is for. So you're eating the right amount of calories to get the result that you want. And your body is in a better place if we're talking about biology wise, like the chemistry in your body is supporting that. So one thing that can help identify this is, instead of measuring weight, measure your inches. It really helps to understand your neck, waist, and hip measurements, because that bottle of your body, that midsection, that'll tell you a lot. So for example, if you lose about an inch around your waist, that's roughly about 6 pounds of body fat gone. So even if the scale says, hey, guess what? You didn't move at all. If you lost about an inch around the waist, you could assume, hey, I probably lost about 6 pounds of body fat and put about that much on in muscle, which is an awesome switch. But even with that, people will think I'm not losing fast enough, because there's this comparison game of all these friends and family and people you see on the internet that are losing a ton of weight really, really fast. And you're like, why can't that be me? Guess what? When you lose that fast, that's going to increase the chances of osteoporosis, sarcopenia, having issues with with your relationship with food. And it's not a good thing to go super fast. The standard when it comes to GLP-1 medications, if you guys caught the previous episodes with Dr. Gabby Gerbino and Dr. Crystal Guevara, they both said 1 pound per week is the gold standard, because that allows you to burn a lot of body fat and retain or build muscle, which will put you in a better position. Okay. And for some reason, when we play this comparison game and we're like, oh, we're not doing this at the same rate as my friends or family, all of a sudden these false beliefs start to kick in, all these buzzwords that we've heard over time in the media or whatever. So things like starvation mode, for example. Guess what? Starvation mode is not a freaking thing. Yes, there is something called metabolic adaptation, where if you take in less calories over time, like if you take in too few calories over time, yes, your metabolic rate does go down, but not to the degree where it totally pauses your results. And guess what? Before you hit that point, you lose a significant amount of body weight. So if you're not losing any weight at all, guess what? You're not in starvation mode. And I'm not saying this to be like, you're wrong or you're dumb or anything like that. I'm just trying to say, hey, guess what? This isn't what's happening with you. So it's worth exploring other things that could possibly be the reason. Because with starvation mode, for you to get to that point where your metabolic rate is significantly impacted, you need to lose a lot of weight. I'm talking like the Biggest Loser style, like where their metabolisms actually were affected, because it was such an extreme example. Like they were eating under like 500 calories a day and working out like 3-4 hours a day for rapid extreme weight loss. And that is not a good thing. Extremes are just not a good thing. But if you're doing a casual diet where you're still going out every once in a while, you're trying to do your best eating better foods, you are not even close to that territory. Okay. And the other one that comes up is thinking your metabolism is broken. This is one of those things that a lot of people will say on social media, or you'll see it in advertisements, because they want you to come to them for the solution. But guess what? When it comes to your metabolism, when we're talking about your metabolism, you need to understand 4 things: your basal metabolic rate, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, thermic effect of food, and exercise. Those are the 4 ways that you burn calories. And they can be impacted by a number of things. Like, for example, calorie bombs. Like if you are able to have a normal rate of calories and there's nothing impacting them, like medications or physical conditions like thyroid issues or anything like that, then you might just be having too many calories and not even knowing it. And that comes from things like calorie bombs, like fattier foods, because for a lot of people on GLP-1s, they can't really eat that much food as far as like size wise. So they're like, okay, I'm barely eating anything. I'm just going to eat the really, really delicious stuff. So they go for the burger, they go for the cheese on top of everything, or they add a lot of oils because they're like, okay, this tastes really good and I'm not having that much, so I'm fine. But there are a shitload of calories in those foods. And even though you're not eating a whole lot, you're going to probably pack on a lot of calories to the point where you are not in a deficit. So you can get that from those foods, oils, or even like little snacks, because that's another common trait too with the GLP-1s is that people will have a lot of snacks throughout the day because that's the only way that they can even put food down because it's so small. But those snacks like nuts, trail mix, things like that, they're fat sources and they also come with a lot of calories and you don't really realize how much it adds up. This is a good case for you, not saying you have to track forever, but like just do it for a week and try and see. Every little thing that goes into your mouth, every single thing, track it and just find out. It can tell you a lot and identify these calorie bombs. And then it puts you in the power position to be like, okay, well, that makes it easy. I'm going to swap this for that. And that should put me in a good spot. And then all of a sudden you start seeing results and you're like, boom, this is great. Another thing too, when you don't get enough calories, it reduces your NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So when you're tired, you're less likely to talk with your hands like I'm doing right now or tap your foot. You're more likely to park a little bit closer to the store because you don't want to walk that far because that's going to be extra effort and you just don't have it. Those little things actually add up to more calories burned throughout the day than exercise does. If you were to see like a chart where they break down your total daily energy expenditure, the chunk of that pie that is non-exercise activity compared to exercise is insane. It's literally like 2 or 3, sometimes 4 times the size of the amount of time of calories that you burn through standardized exercise. And one way that we can kind of account for this is by keeping a step count. Is it perfect? No, but it keeps a baseline of non-exercise activity. So if you can get yourself to a place where it's like 5 to 10K a day, then that could be really helpful because if you're super sedentary, your caloric needs throughout the day are so low that it becomes harder to burn body fat and it becomes harder for these drugs to do their job. Next is thermic effect of food. You're eating less food, so you don't burn as many calories digesting the food, letting it go through your GI tract, excreting it. All that stuff takes calories. Literally you sitting down and pushing one out. Okay, sorry for the image, but that takes calories. Not that many, but it does eat up a lot of calories. But you don't do that as much if you are not having those movements as frequently. There's some people on GLP-1s that go number 2 like once or twice a week, and it's insane. That's a very good case for, hey, you're not getting enough food. Next is exercise. When it does come time for exercise, you just don't have the energy. You don't have the ability to put yourself through a workout where you're able to push hard enough where you can build or maintain muscle mass or improve or maintain your cardiorespiratory fitness. And that's a big problem because if you can't do that, then you're going to go backwards when it comes to your fitness and your body composition. And that's working against your goals, not for them. And then last but not least is BMR. Like I talked about before with starvation mode, when you get to a point where your body is smaller, you don't need as many calories. This is why bigger people can eat more calories and lose weight, kind of like men versus women, where you're like, oh, my husband can just not drink a beer this week or not drink any beer and he drops 5 pounds. Meanwhile, I'm stuck and I feel like everything I put in my mouth just sticks to my body. That's because guys tend to be bigger. And that is one of the things that plays into it. There's multiple other things too. They also tend to have a little bit more muscle mass, which again is a reason we want to be able to put in effort for our workouts and build that muscle mass. But overall, like when your body gets smaller, it just doesn't need as many calories. And then you have to adjust the plan when you get to that point. But this comes in big chunks. This isn't, oh, I lost 5 pounds. My metabolism is going to be so much lower. No, I'm talking like chunks of 20, 30, 40 pounds. That's when it starts to actually make a bit of a difference. Okay. Now, this all results when we don't lose that weight it results in increasing the dosage because that's what the guidelines say. If you don't see the result, then it's time to up it if you can tolerate it. And what happens is places like compounding pharmacies or companies like Row or med spas, they use these guidelines and they're like, well, time to up your dose, which means we can charge you more. So you're not getting unbiased opinion. You're not getting the actual information that you need because they're like, oh, I just want to get more money out of you. So that being said, the guidelines really don't take fitness into account because most people are not exercising. Most people are not fit. So if we're talking big population scales, people that don't work out, if they're on these drugs, they should lose pretty like steadily about 1 pound per week because they don't have this muscle mass getting in the way and adding weight to the scale. They don't have these things happening that are adjusting expectations because when you have more muscle and less fat, you also have some higher calorie needs. You need to support this activity. And you don't want to be in a place where you can't do that because the medications are hindering that. So, what do? Number one, you want to get some nutritional guidance. Okay. And honestly, I go to bat for doctors. I'm marrying one, but your doctor is not the best place to get nutritional help because they just do not have the time. That's just the way our medical system is set up for most people. Like, are there places and situations where you get more time with your doctor to talk about these things? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, when it comes to their specialty, what you want to go to them for, it is medicine based. It is overall health based. It's not specifically nutrition. So if you want to get the best case scenario, you could ask for a referral to a registered dietitian, or you can seek one out because depending on where you're at, sometimes you could just go to a registered dietitian, but you got to find one, or you can get a qualified nutritionist or coach. But I will say this, nutritionist is a very loose term. There are a lot of people claiming to be nutritionists that have a weekend certification, and then they're teaching everybody like they think that they're on the same level as a registered dietitian. It is not the same thing, and they are not created equal. So when it comes to finding people that actually are most likely going to give you good information, it's not a guarantee, but it is a good like first step to find somebody with a certification in precision nutrition. Their level 1 is incredible. I did that one, and it's very, very helpful, not only on just the numbers side of things, but also the habits, the psychology, and then the experience that comes with doing this. Like I've been doing this for a decade. So you get to use these certs and see what works, see what doesn't, because a lot of them are like, oh, this is textbook, what should work. This is what research says, but then practically doesn't end up actually working. But I will say precision, I find myself going back to their techniques a lot. So precision nutrition is a very good one. I know another one is MAC Nutrition, MNU. That's Martin McDonald's nutrition course. He's out of Australia. He's a very well-renowned physique coach, and he applies those concepts in a way that are very helpful to the general pop. There's NCI, which I also did. That one is really good on the numbers side of things and also being a little bit more practical and being more specific based on somebody's situation when it comes to their activity levels and if they do certain things like CrossFit or High Rocks, or if they do general fitness like strength training. Macros Inc., Brad Dieter is one of the OGs of the nutrition space. So that nutrition coaching cert is very good too. And there's a few others, but those are off the top of my head, like the really good ones, because I want to hammer this home again. It's not just about the numbers. It's also about the habits, like keeping track of how you're doing with them, like making sure that you can actually meet with somebody frequently to discuss the problems that you're having with sticking to certain habits, because that's really the big thing that I see people struggling with is, yeah, they get information that's solid on the surface, but the execution is lacking because we're not actually having these touch points where it's like, okay, why are we struggling with this? Yes, we should eat, like for most people, they should have about 30 grams of protein or more per meal. You say to do it and they're like, I got this. It lasts for a week and then they stop. And then a month, 2 months, 3 months goes by, they see their doctor and they're like, yeah, the GLP-1s just aren't working. It's like, no. We're not actually doing the things to support this and help put us in the best position possible so we can reduce the calorie intake so the drugs can do their job. Now, you need somebody in your corner to be like, hey, you can't get your 30 grams of protein. Okay, let's chat about that. What kind of issues are you having? Oh, well, I just never have anything to eat. Okay, so what does your grocery shopping look like? Well, I just get the usual stuff. It's like, okay, so can we adjust that grocery list so you can be in a better position to have the foods you need? Yeah, cool. Let's do that. And then boom, all of a sudden now it's easier to stick to it. Or, oh, I always fall off because I have to have, or I always go out for lunch at like for work, like we're always grabbing something. It's like, cool. So let's go take a look at the menu of where you're going and see what we can get to put you in a better position. And then we go through that. I've done this with hundreds of people at this point. It is a very big problem that a lot of people have. They just, on the surface, these standard recommendations just don't hold up because life, and you got to learn how to navigate life. And then the psychology of it. Sometimes you don't need a certain piece of advice at a certain time because we're just not at the place where we're ready to change or where we're open to doing things differently. And that's okay because we all do this at different rates. But your psychology is not always going to line up with these dosage recommendations. And that's also a problem. So you want to understand where you're at as far as what your willingness is to change and do things to better yourself and improve your health. And last but not least is that experience component. You want to make sure you have somebody who's been doing this a while. Now, if you take your health seriously and you're not just looking for the budget option, then you don't want to be somebody's first time. You don't want to be that person who gets the Planet Fitness trainer that just got hired yesterday and hasn't trained anybody ever, and you're their first client. Now, there are going to be people like that, and that's how people start getting really, really good. But I'm just saying, if you don't want to be that person and you want to get results now and you don't want to be part of their learning experience where they might not be able to help you for a few years because they're still figuring it out, find somebody who's been doing this a while. All right. And also, when you're measuring your progress, measure the right things. Inches are going to tell you so much more than the scale will. So check those inches. Okay. And habits, track how good you are at actually sticking to your habits, like protein, like getting enough fiber, like eating 3 meals a day, even though you don't have those hunger signals. Instead of eating for hunger, you're now eating for fueling your body. And drinking too, because it's going to kill your thirst. You need to drink when you know you need to, not when you're thirsty, because this will alter your ability to feel hungry and thirsty. And also focus on energy and performance. If you cannot do the things that are required to get you the long-term results, something needs to change. You have to have a conversation with your provider, because this is, and I'm just quoting this straight from the Obesity Medicine Association, probably the foremost authority when it comes to GLP-1s. During GLP-1 use, nutritional and medical management of gastrointestinal side effects is critical. And they go on to say preventing nutrient deficiencies, preserving muscle and bone mass through resistance training and appropriate diet are necessary. Okay. When we focus on those things, preventing nutrient deficiencies, preserving muscle mass and bone mass, that comes down to being able to eat enough. That doesn't mean jacking the dosage up to the point where you're eating next to nothing. That means getting the dosage just right so that way you can do the things that you need to do without the food noise, without feeling like you're always white knuckling this process. Okay, because it also goes on to say in the OMA reference framework that if patients do not tolerate the maximum dose weekly, the maintenance dosage may be reduced. And then it goes on to say if the lower step weekly dose is not tolerated, semaglutide, this is for semaglutide, but I would assume the tirzepatide is about the same recommendation. But it says semaglutide should be discontinued. So for some people, if you cannot do this the right way and you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, it just might not be the right one for you. And I know that sucks and it is terrible to hear because you're like, well, what else do I do? It could mean that you gotta go a different route. But at the end of the day, this needs to be about health. This isn't just, oh, let's drop to a number on the scale that I feel like is the right number for me that makes my brain happy. It's what can I do? Like, what does this allow me to do as far as burning enough body fat where I'm at a body composition where excess body fat is not causing problems like diabetes, like hormonal issues, like joint issues and things like that? Am I able to improve my health to the point where my blood work gets better, where my fitness gets better, where my cardiorespiratory fitness gets better? All these things should be at the, I'm getting so animated. I'm hitting the mic. But these things should be first and foremost, not just the weight. And I know that can be tough to wrap our heads around because we're so freaking focused on the scale. But let's just say it with me. Screw the scale. focus on what matters, and you will be so much better off. You'll be so much happier. You'll be so much more fulfilled, and you're going to feel incredible. Okay. But it needs to be done the right way. So I hope that this helps people out there when it comes to understanding these GLP-1s and how to use them in the best way possible. And at the end of the day, I will say I am not a doctor. Okay. I am not a medicine expert. I am a fitness expert. So this is all to have a better, more productive conversation with your doctor. And I would recommend going to a doctor because of what I mentioned before. Those other companies, like those other routes, usually it is profit-based, and you are not going to get an unbiased opinion. And sometimes you won't even get informed consent. You won't even get the downsides of what could happen because they're just so focused on getting your money. So if you're working with a physician, just use this information to have a good conversation with them and ask them. And if they are fighting this tooth and nail, then could be worth getting a second opinion. And it always helps to get somebody who is a specialist in obesity medicine. Now, there are a lot who are not experts in obesity medicine that are prescribing GLP-1s, and they could very well be very good resources, but it also helps to have somebody who literally is trained and board certified on obesity medicine to get the best possible recommendations and best possible help for you, because you deserve the best. Okay, plain and simple. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you got a lot out of it. Before you go, I just have one quick small ask. Just take 2 seconds and leave a 5-star rating, give it a like on YouTube, or share this with someone you know will benefit from it. Thank you so much in advance. I'll see you in the next episode. But until then, go kick some ass. Bye-bye.